Belief shapes practice. Belief shapes practice. In other words, an organization's identity, character, relationships, culture, and systems, all of which affect its success and profitability, are directly influenced by beliefs, whether we explicitly acknowledge those beliefs or not. Now, if we step out of the organizational frame for just a moment, we can apply this notion that belief shapes practice in every other arena of our life. Belief shapes practice. What does that really mean? It means that what we believe to be true shapes every choice we make, right? Every decision we make, every action we take, every relationship we have, how we treat people, who we include or exclude, not only at work, but in our relationship with our spouses and other loved ones, our children, our parents, our sisters and brothers, our neighbors, with the man or woman at the grocery store, at the market, on the bus. Every single thing we are and do. In other words, our identity, our character, our values, our relationships, the systems that we have in place in our lives are directly influenced by our beliefs, whether we explicitly acknowledge those beliefs or not. And those beliefs, every single one of them, affect our success or lack of success in our lives. Now, let me underscore that these beliefs run our lives. They run our life. Why? Because our unconscious is just as powerful, if not more so, than our conscious mind. Now, earlier I mentioned that Max wrote and spoke about leadership as an art and leadership as jazz. Just as I do in my own work, he also wrote and spoke about leadership as connecting your voice and touch. One of the stories that Max shares about connecting our voice and touch is in the prologue, the very beginning of his book, Leadership Jazz. It's also in his book called Dear Zoe. It is a very, very moving story. And it's a story that emerges from Max not as the CEO, as one of the top-ranked companies in the world. It's a story that emerges from his days and nights as a grandfather. One of my friends, who was fortunate to have Max as her mentor, up close and personal, says the story is one of the most beautiful childbirth and childhood stories ever written. In his book, Dear Zoe, Max writes a series of letters to his granddaughter, Zoe, who was born prematurely. At 24 weeks, she weighed 1 pound, 7 ounces, and she was only 11 inches tall. In fact, Zoe was so tiny that Max could slip his wedding ring all the way to the top of her tiny little arm. Now, as a mom who lost one of my own children, when he was about 25 weeks old, I can attest that my own son was small enough that I could have done the exact same thing with my own ring and his tiny little arms. So now, just let me share with you the story that makes me cry and sing every time I read it. The heart of the story is about Max's encounter with a nurse a few days after his granddaughter was born. As I mentioned, I first encountered this story in a book about leadership. It's a very fitting prologue to Dupree's now famous book, Leadership Jazz. In his own voice, Max says, Esther, my wife, and I have a granddaughter named Zoe, the Greek word for life. She was born prematurely and weighed 1 pound, 7 ounces, so that my small wedding ring could slide up her arm to her shoulder. Now, the neonatologist who first examined her told us that she had a 5 to 10% chance of living 3 days. When Esther and I scrubbed up for our first visit and saw Zoe in her isolette in the neonatal intensive care unit, she had 2 IVs in her navel, 1 in her foot, a monitor on each side of her chest, and a respirator tube and a feeding tube in her mouth. To complicate matters, Zoe's biological father had jumped ship the month before Zoe was born. Realizing this, a wise and caring nurse named Ruth gave me my instructions. For the next several months at least, you're the surrogate father. I want you to come to the hospital every day to visit Zoe. And when you come, I want you to rub her body and legs and arms with the tip of your finger. And while you're caressing her, you should tell her over and over how much you love her. Because she has to be able to connect your voice to your touch. Max goes on to say, Ruth was doing exactly the right thing on Zoe's behalf, and, of course, on my behalf as well. And without realizing it, she was giving me one of the best possible descriptions of the work of a leader. At the core of becoming a leader is the need always to connect one's voice and one's touch. Don't you just love that story? I've shared it with leaders in all kinds of places, classrooms, and my coaching and my consulting and my leadership institutes. So whether you're leading yourself, your team at work, your family, your church, your classroom, the city hall, or a board of directors, at the core of becoming a leader, who people can trust, a leader who people will follow, is connecting your voice and your touch. Now, this isn't something that happens overnight. It really is the work of becoming. Not of being, but of becoming. It is the work of becoming a leader. And it is one of the most thrilling journeys. Indeed, this is the journey of a lifetime. As I speak these words, know this. There is someone out there, someone who is longing to hear your voice. They're longing to feel and experience your touch. You may not know this person's name yet, but they're waiting. They're waiting just for you. Why? They're waiting for you to be a leader in their life. They're waiting for you to connect your voice and touch so that you can do the same in their life, so that you can make a difference in your own life and in theirs. You know, sometimes we're not even aware. We're not even aware that we're also waiting for someone. Right now, I want you to hit the pause button just for a moment and ask yourself, whose voice touches you? Whose voice moves you? And why? Why is that? What is it about that person's voice that actually touches or moves you? Can you name exactly what it is? Can you describe the feeling that person sparks within you? If you can, then write it down. Write it down. I also want you to ask yourself, what have I been aware of in my own voice? What have I been aware of in my own touch? What have I been aware of when I connect my own voice and touch? And when you are aware, notice what happens. Notice what happens in you, and notice what happens in others. What happens inside them? What's the impact of your voice and touch? Just today I was talking with a client. She's hired me to lead a retreat for her team. Now, she's very savvy, right? And she's also very busy. And she just had a little bit of doubt in her voice about whether her team was as excited about the retreat as she was. And so we talked about that for a while. And then I asked her, are you excited about the retreat? How excited are you? And are you excited for you and for your team? And she said, yeah. I then asked if she had told her team about her excitement, and she said, well, no, I don't think I have. And then I simply asked how she might connect her voice and touch, how she might connect what she thought and felt with her demonstration of that, right? In other words, I asked her to consider if her talk and her walk lined up, if her talk and her walk were in harmony. Now, one of the biggest gifts we can offer to others is becoming the leader we were designed to be, becoming the leader we're meant to be, so that we can make a difference in our own lives and in their lives, right? Connecting our voice and our touch. All that jazz. Be sure to join me next week as we continue to celebrate the majestic music of your life and celebrate you for making your life count. Now, if you missed last week's show or any part of this week's broadcast, you can listen to the recording at your convenience. You can even listen to it on the go. Check it out at www.talknetworkradio.com/legacy living. LEGACYLIVING. Now, before I close today's show, I want to thank each of you for tuning in, for allowing me to share a bit about my journey with what legacy living is all about. Not just living and learning, but living and learning and serving, so that you make a difference in your own life and in the lives of others. So that you are being and living on purpose every single day, 365, 24/7. Legacy living is one of the many ways to make your life count. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Burgess. Please join me again next week, right here on Talk Network Radio for another show of Legacy Living, Make Your Life Count. We're here again next Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, right here, Talk Network Radio. Don't just count the days in your life. Make the days in your life count. That's what legacy living is all about. Have a fantastic day, and remember, make the days in your life count. God bless you. That's our show today. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Burgess. I hope you'll join me again next week. Until then, don't just count the days in your life. Make the days in your life count. That's what legacy living is all about. Here's to you. Have a fantastic day. Be sure to make it a yes kind of day. And remember, celebrate. Celebrate the music of your life. Make the days in your life count. I'm so grateful that you joined me today. Today is Wednesday, October 3rd.